get going. I'm Susan Stewart, the founder of Her, and I run the Her magazine as well. And I love this series that we're doing. We're really trying to find key people to teach in these episodes on things that really are going to help you elevate your career and just motivate you to get to that next level, wherever that is for you, and just help support each other in our industry as women. So we're glad you're here. We're excited for our episode 3. We have Kristen Sherfy. She's with Stewart Title National. She's also a certified coach and trainer. So we're so excited because I know we hear all the talks about goals and goal setting and next year, and we're all getting excited for it, but we're also tired from this year. So this will be a good one to get us motivated to really get it all on paper. And we're excited to have her. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristen. She can introduce herself a little bit more and get started. And then at the end, we'll leave 5 minutes for questions. So if you guys have any questions throughout, go ahead and press the raise button. And then also please mute if you can, so that we don't get the background, because we are recording this and this will go on the Her YouTube channel. So thank you so much for being here. And Kristen, welcome. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here, and especially amongst title professionals, right? And again, one of the things that Susan alluded to is me being a certified coach. A lot of times I like to clarify what that means, because there's a lot of coaches out here. You have fitness coaches, life coaches, those type of things. This is actually like a qualified postgraduate certified program that helps you to learn how to work with people and resources in a way that aligns with their highest good and helps them to get over mental hurdles and things like that. Coaching is all about the view going forward. So excited to be here today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kristen Sherfay. I'm with Stewart Title, as you probably can see from my beautiful background. Also from my team is here, Heather Wilson and Nicole Glass. We serve the national agency side of the title world. And I've spent 20 years in the industry. As many of you guys have, the journey has been not a straight line. I've worked across legal, operations, sales, and my latest journey was I spent 3 years in IT and transformation leadership. So I like to say I grew up in the industry. And if you've been in title, long enough, that it shapes it shapes you in ways that you don't expect, right? I started out in claims and I ended up in IT. Now I'm in sales, right? So I've kind of done a myriad of things. So the other thing I wanted to just kind of go through as that journey unfolded is I've spent the last several years feeling called to deepen my work in leadership. Again, I alluded to my coaching journey and what coaching is about, but really what led me there is the passion for people and seeing how when resources come together and you really talk to somebody in the language that they need, how it can move them along better. And it changed me as a person. But that led me to getting my coaching certifications. I have a associate's coaching cert with the ICF, board's coaching certificate. And then I also have specialty certificates in leadership, culture change, strategic planning, time management, that kind of thing. So again, these things are all really, really great if you're a leader and you're considering, growing or deepening that. I highly recommend coaching, or even just looking at coaching. The other thing I want to talk about before we dive into this, because we are all super, I would say, we are all super effective and efficient leaders or people, or we as women, we're multitaskers. We do a lot of things. And before I dive into this, I want everybody to know first and foremost, I am a recovering perfectionist. Every single day, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so as I wrote this presentation and as I dove through this, I want you guys to hear that it's coming from a recovering perfectionist, and it was therapy for me to do it. So I hope it's good for you. The other thing I wanted to just say is, I used to live by do the most and control the most because that's me. And I like to have, I'm a type A type of person. If my coaching certifications and all of the things there didn't already show that about me. But now I'm more about alignment and how alignment matters more than even balance or perfection, right? The theme of alignment is the heartbeat of today's conversation. And although this session is all about planning, and you guys probably came here and you probably, expecting me to show you some cool templates and things like that. Sadly, you're going to be disappointed, but trust me, the conversation that we need to have, I hope, jolts you into your goal planning as we go. And many of you are probably somewhere along the journey of your goal planning, like I am, right? So you're probably already noting something. So the truth is, your success begins long before we start those lists, long before we start those jump into our templates and our planners and things like that. It begins inside. And that is where we're going to start today. Okay, so why mindset matters. As I just said, you came today expecting a goal planning session, maybe systems, templates, strategies, calendars. But before we go anywhere near any of that, we need to talk about what's going on up here, right? Your mindset. Your mindset is the inner foundation for everything that is to come. It's the part that no one sees, but everyone experiences, right? Does that resonate when I say that? It's the part that nobody sees, but everybody experiences, right? Sometimes we think we're coming off as, calm and friendly, and people think that we have RBF. And since this is being recorded, we all know what RBF is, right? Mindset is your inner foundation, right? So that's where I want to start with goal planning. It's the part, like I said, nobody sees. And if you have the wrong mindset, that internal world, right? Have you ever been in the most beautiful place in the world, but your mind isn't right, right? So you can't really experience it. And so that's where I say we have to start. Here's what I've learned as both a title professional and a coach. You can have the perfect strategy, the perfect planner. I'm looking at Heather because we love planners. The perfect color coded goals. You can have the tags. You can have the organization. But if your internal belief system underneath all of that is cracked, confused, conflicted, nothing's going to stick, right? And so this is where I go back to, you could be in the most beautiful place in the world, but if your mind isn't right, it's not gonna work. Mindset is clarity. Mindset is intention. Mindset is identity. What you believe about yourself, your capacity, your worthiness, and your future, all of that drives your choices, your behaviors, and your outcomes, right? And so this was really exciting for me to draft this because, again, going back to, I feel like I'm speaking to a group of women. We're all women. It might be a little bit different for men, but I did think about all of us as women because, again, how many times are we going through things with a million things on our mind, right? Or not the right mindset, or a moment comes and we can enjoy it, or it's something we've worked really, really hard for, and we can't even enjoy it because our mind isn't there. So this is why the inner work is not optional. It's the work. This is the work that determines everything. So again, we're not starting with planning. We're starting with your mind. I absolutely love this quote. I decided to put it in here because, again, it hits on exactly what we're talking about. Whether you think you can or you can't, who knows what comes after that. Exactly. It's all about what's up here, right? So one of the most accurate mindset quotes is this one. And your brain builds evidence for whatever it believes. I'm sure you guys have heard of this, right? And so if you believe something to be true, your brain can start searching for those patterns, or it starts searching for that pattern recognition. If you believe something is possible, you start noticing opportunities or glimmers of hope, right? If you believe that it's not possible, you start to notice the obstacles. You might even start to notice your failures. You might even start questioning why you're doing it, right? So you're going to notice those things about it. Belief, like I said, equals your behavior. So I am not a runner, right? But if I wanted to run starting today, I would have to believe that I could run. And I have a strong belief that I can't, but I would have to change my mindset, because if I started to run today, oh man, I'd quit probably in the first 3 houses I run by, because I would convince myself that this is not for me because it's not for me. Behavior equals your identity, right? And so your behavior is who you become, right? What your legacy is. That's the external part of you that you're putting on as your identity. And your identity is what equals the results. And so all of that behavior that we're putting on helps us to build rapport. It helps us to build relationships, networks, all those things. So before we build your year, we're building the internal structure that helps you actually follow through on it. Because when your mindset is not aligned, your path is not aligned either. I hate to say it. An aligned path, those are the sustainable paths. This is where I go back to my running analogy. Okay, so again, if my mindset is I can't run, I don't like to run, I don't want to sweat, right? I mean, that's my mindset, right? But I could change that by slipping on a new frame of reference there. And this leads to, so when we talked about those 3 things, about, your thoughts become your actions become your identity becomes, how you function in the world. Success is not accidental. It's aligned. Like I said, and you guys are going to hear me talk about alignment a lot in this presentation. This slide shows the 3 pillars of sustainable success: strategy, clarity, and goals. But what I want to emphasize is that strategy fails without clarity. Goals fail without identity, and success fails without alignment. So strategy fails without clarity. How many times have we dove into projects and we've paid the money? It's a great product. It's a great project. But ultimately the adoption's not there, right? So the people who are using the technology, at the end of the day, it's not there. Maybe the communication was flawed, right? Clarity. Give people clarity as to where we're going, what we're doing, and how we're going to get there, right? I mean, be ready to answer those questions, because a lot of times people will work harder towards a shared goal if they're clear about it, and they can even iterate or identify ways to make it better. But goals fail without identity. When I say this, you think about your identity, right? Is this aligned with who you are? Is this something that you want? So with strategy, if you create a strategy from misalignment, from burnout, from fear, pressure, comparison, you're going to build something you don't actually want, and you will probably eventually sabotage it. I want to go back to the clarity and goals, right? So when your mind is clear, your actions become consistent. Why? Because you know your reasoning and that pattern becomes consistent. When your mind is chaotic, your actions become reactive, right? Instead of thinking clearly through that problem, you're going to start reacting to that problem, right? And that's not what we want to do either, because a lot of times our reactionary state, that emotionally dysregulated state, doesn't always bring us the clearest answers or help us to behave in a way that we want to, that helps us to move things along. And when your goals aren't achieved because they're written down, or I'm sorry, your goals aren't achieved because they're written down. So you write down your goals and you're like, checklist, right? I love a checklist. Don't even get me started on a checklist. I can go forever on a checklist. But they're not achieved because they're written down. They're achieved because your identity matches the person who wants to execute them. This is why our work today is not set goals. It's becoming aligned with the goals that you choose. And so I hope that resonates, because for me, again, I'll go back to the checklist, right? And we might have our list of goals. We might even be putting resolutions. I'm not a champion for resolutions, but if you are, what I want to say, and the takeaway here is, it's got to be aligned with who you are in order for it to be successful. And it also has to be aligned with the shared vision of your teams, from a leadership perspective. Okay, and this one, again, therapy for me. Let's talk about one of the biggest blockers for women: perfection. So life does not move in a straight line. We've covered that. If we just look at the trajectory of my career in the title industry, right, we want it to move in a straight line, A to B, but a lot of times it's a sharp, jagged line with drops and trends, and it's a lot of different changes, right? Our careers don't move in a straight line. Our emotional bandwidth definitely doesn't move in a straight line. And as women, especially in leadership roles, we often carry invisible loads, right? We're not just carrying the mental load of our team or our work or that. We have our family, our parents, our house, the car, what we're going to make for dinner, what's on the grocery list, what do we forget, all of those things. The emotional labor of home, the logistics, relationship management, the expectations of being the glue for everybody. That's an invisible one that I like to point out a lot, because even though we don't know it, we always have that mental strain, I think, as women, to be the glue, be the peacemakers. And when you're balancing that much, perfection becomes not only unrealistic, right? Okay, so again, therapy for myself here. Perfection doesn't only become unrealistic, it becomes harmful to ourselves. We start to get imposter syndrome. We start to question our worth. We start to question our identity, who we are, what is what we do matters, right? The only way that we can combat perfection is flexibility, right? And so this is me, and it's funny because I call my inner voice Batman, because it's got its own identity. So flexibility is what keeps us moving forward. Flexibility is what allows us to adapt without collapsing. And so what I try to tell myself in situations where I start slipping back into that perfectionism behavior, right? And we all can recognize it. I say, okay, but what if it turned out differently, right? That's another thing that I like to remind myself here, or the perfectionist Batman version of myself here, is that my view of how this should go is not the only view of how this should go. There's an infinite number of possibilities that can come out of this. I'm using limited thinking here. I'm being a perfectionist. I might be surprised with the outcome of how it happens. Flexibility challenges us to bend our thinking versus to break our thinking, right? So we start to ask ourselves questions of, okay, what else could happen? What if another one to slip on is, what if so-and-so saw this? Well, how would they like to see this happen? So you start to slip on a different frame of reference there. Here's something most people skip. And this for me is going to be a big one. And this is reflection, right? So the next topic I want to talk about is reflection. And the title on this slide I have is Clarity Comes from Looking Back. A note I have for myself to say on this slide is, reflection is a leadership skill, not a luxury. Okay, so reflection, this goes, as I segue from my perfectionism, right, and flexibility, we just talked about that. And reflection is another way that we can combat that, because it becomes a system of rewards, or at least it has, in my experience, become a system of rewards for my perfectionism. So what happens when we reflect on things? It starts to teach us a way, because we start to go, hey, wait a second, what went wrong? Why did that happen? What went right? And when you start looking back at those data points, it can start to tell you a story of how you can make it better, or what you can continue doing that worked well. So when I talk about reflection, and I'm a big data nerd, and I like looking out for anomalies and things like that, because data tells a story. And so for me, I added the slide in here talking about reflection because it comes from looking back. The perfectionist in us says we do it and we do great and we shine and we move on, right? But what if we fail? What if something did go wrong? What if it was halfway good, halfway bad, right? We can start pulling out those threads, and instead of beating ourselves up over what went wrong or what we could have done better, we start to use those as data points to tell us a story about how we want to move forward. So say I set a goal for wanting to publicly speak, right? And that was a big goal for me. and I do it. And my first time doing it isn't that great, or something happens. Should I just quit? No, I can take those data points and I can start reflecting on why it didn't work for me, what went wrong, those types of things. So we start answering questions. And so for me, this becomes a system of reward after that perfectionism, because I can say, I can step into something, not be perfect, and still be rewarded because I'm going to learn something about myself because I get those data points. So your past year contains the data for your next year. It tells you what energized you, what drained you, what aligned, and what absolutely didn't. And this isn't just a feel-good exercise. Studies show that reflection increases achieving your goals by 25%, right? And so when I say all these things, I talk about, and I want to prep you for the year ahead, right? And so as you're prepping those goals, those questions that I talked about, like, what actually worked? What didn't? Where did I feel resentment, burnout, avoidance? Where did I feel energized, successful, or proud? So as you reflect on those things versus a checklist of things to do, you might have some deeper goals that emerge that tell you something more about yourself, right? So as we're reflecting on, okay, this year, who was I this year? How did that make me feel this year? And what do I want to carry over into next year? And then as we do that, we bake in that flexibility for, okay, I don't have to come at it perfect. I'm looking to learn more about myself. So this slide is the heart of coaching. So leadership begins with self-honesty. And for those of you who are here today that are not currently acting in a leadership capacity or aren't currently leading teams, I just want to say you're the leader of yourself, and you're always a leader in every circle that you're in, right? So, how you present yourself, you might not be a leader of people, but you are, in fact, a leader in society. You can't shift your reality, right? We've been talking a lot about the inner mind and ways we can shift our perspective on, towards our goals so that we can accomplish them. You can't shift your inner reality if you refuse to examine the beliefs, habits, and fears driving your decisions. If I go back to my example about me wanting to run a marathon, okay, like, I'd have to examine all of my beliefs in that space thoroughly, right? In order to get myself to a place where I truly could be successful, because my mindset has to be there. And so I would have to examine those elements of what is holding me back, because there are those things. And I use this example because for me, it's one of those things that if somebody said, we're gonna go run a marathon, I already am like, ugh, like the idea itself. And we have some of those things that kind of come up in our world, where we automatically resist it, right? Ooh, that's hard, or ooh, I don't want to do that thing. But it's things that we have to accomplish. And you might procrastinate or not get to them, or actually not even be successful in that space if you can't examine the beliefs, habits, and fears around what is, happening in that space in your mind around that thing in front of you. When you examine it, it means so when I talk about examination and examining in this space, it's talking about noticing your patterns without judging yourself. And I want to be careful with that. So when you start to notice those patterns emerge in your daily life, you might start to judge yourself. I mean, again, me and Batman's pretty mean to me. That's my inner voice. And, I start judging myself. That's not helpful. We're not judging it. We're analyzing it. We're saying, okay, what is that thing? And why do I feel this way? Right. And so you start to go, and what can I do about it? How can I improve it or make it better? Or how do I reframe that thought to tell me a different story? Because life is about the story that goes on in your mind. So you start to examine those things, and you can start to challenge yourself. Is it limited thinking? Is this imposter syndrome? Am I judging myself? Is this analyzing it in a way where I can do better in the future? So as you're examining those are the things I would say in that space Awareness means taking responsibility for your emotional landscape, right? So you're aware of what is going on inside and outside, right? When we talk about emotional landscape, right? We have, again, I talk about you can have lots going on, and on the outside, people think, oh, she's great, she's in the happiest mood. But also being aware how you show up in situations, right? Bring awareness to how are you showing up? How are you interacting with people? Is that the way that you want to show up in your emotional landscape? Because as you become more aware, you can start to make changes and you can start to modify those things to help you achieve those goals. So again, a lot of your goals are not just going to be you focused. It's going to be other people will be involved in the success or failure of that. So how you show up and being aware of your response, or I'm sorry, of your emotional landscape and being responsible for it matters. Relationship. So that's more understanding that how you relate to yourself becomes the blueprint for how you relate to others. I didn't put it in here, but I wanted to because I'm a big music person and lyrics are fun. I was just gonna make a slide that said how you gonna win when you ain't right within by the fantastic Lauryn Hill, right? So how are you gonna win when you ain't right within? How you show up for yourself matters because it's how you start to show up in the world and for other people. So I go back to, we talked about um, examining your thoughts, not judging yourself. We talked about being aware of how you show up, right? And being aware, bring that attention back to it, so you start to see yourself in a different way. And then your relationship with yourself, start to improve that and tell yourself a different story. A lot of times, again, that story that goes on in our head, whether you think you can or you can't, that's what becomes our reality. The other, I would say, invisible influencer in how we set our goals is our values. And so we have our belief system, we talked about all of that, right? And our mindset, but our values are also a strong undercurrent on how we achieve our goals. And so I wanted to bring this in here and say, let your values be your filter in the coming year. Inevitably, 2026 is unpredictable and will bring us all kinds of challenges that we are not even fully aware of, right? And so when life becomes unpredictable, values become your anchor. Values are not about what looks good on paper. Values are about what truly feels right in your body. And when your goals don't match your values, you are going to feel resistance. So again, I'll go back to that resistance feeling for running for me. If it was tied to some sort of value, right, I might be a little bit more motivated to do that. The resistance in my body might lessen. That tension might lessen because maybe I'm doing it for a friend of mine that has breast cancer and to raise money, right? And I'm more motivated to do it because it's a value that's driving it. Um, when your goals do match your values, everything begins to flow more naturally. We all have been there in those situations where it's something you're very excited about, it's something that you want to do, and it's something that's energizing. Everything starts to flow more naturally. And that's probably because our beliefs are aligned, that value is aligned, and our mindset is aligned. Misaligned goals are always going to drain you. Aligned goals are going to fuel you. Values are going to help you make decisions faster, stay grounded when things get hard, and avoid commitments that drain your soul, like running. It's also going to help you choose goals and actually feel good to pursue. So before we start setting any goals, and again, you guys are probably like, I wanted a goal plan. But again, I really want to harp on the mindset portion of this because that's what really matters here. Before you set any goals in 2026, remind yourself, does this honor who I'm becoming? And does this support the life that I want? One of the things that I like to do every year is have a vision board party with my closest friends. And we create vision boards out of like old magazines, pictures of us, things that we want, right? Because it's more about who we're becoming instead of that goal, right? Because a lot of our accomplishments are part of us, right? Because it's a part of our story, it's part of our legacy. And so, who is that person that we want to become in 2026? And what is the life I want to support in 2026? I think are really, really good questions for those goals. You're allowed to be all of you. Sorry, it took a minute before I started this one. And this one is, again, I think we as women, we can compartmentalize. We have our work self, we have our home self, mom self, school self, partner self, we have versions of us, right? And you're allowed to be all of those versions all at the same time. This is one of my favorite slides because it reflects on something that we as women definitely struggle with. We have to choose between professional me and personal me. And one is always sacrificing for the other. I mean, it feels like, the mom me constantly has to sacrifice for, the personal life me. The professional me constantly has to sacrifice for the mom me, And so what I want to talk about is integrating those beings, right? Because we are all of those things. I have both here in my notes because professional me and personal me, but we are both, and we deserve to thrive in both, right? We shouldn't be sacrificing or feeling like we're failing as a mom if we're thriving at work, and vice versa. Professional me loves achievement, leadership, visibility. Personal me, she wants to go home and rest and take a bath, and she wants to be fulfilled and unbothered. There's power in the balance of those two versions of me. And the power is in the and I put that here, right? So, and boundaries, communication, and self-trust are what you need in order to integrate these identities. When you honor both versions of yourself, you create alignment, and aligned women are unstoppable, right? So you're that all-encompassing human. It's not one or the other. It's an integrated version of you. So goals that actually stick. A lot of you have probably heard of the SMART goals, right? I mean, and many of us probably use SMART goals in our careers. But this is where I want to get practical and use a word that's more aligned with what we want to accomplish, and that's real. So you'll see here I put real. And so I use a framework for myself called real goals because it fixes the biggest problem with traditional goal setting in my mind. It focuses on behavior, not, I'm sorry, it doesn't focus on behavior. It focuses more on the alignment portion that we've been talking about throughout this presentation. Real stands for, and it's here on the screen, R is rooted in values, right? If your goal contradicts your values, consistency becomes impossible. Again, you're going to start acting out of character and it's not going to be sustainable. Energizing is the E there. Your goals should light you up and not weigh you down, right? And you might be saying, but Kristen, there's a couple of things on my to-do list this year, or those goals that I have to accomplish, and they don't bring me down. So how do we reframe it in a way so that it becomes more enjoyable? How do we modify it so that it becomes energizing? Accountable.
Oh my gosh.
Don't do not punish yourself, right? So this isn't going to be a big one as you go through the year. You're going to have stumbles. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have obstacles and things that get in your way. You're going to mess up. You're going to say things that you don't mean. You're going to have situations where you feel like you failed. Be accountable to yourself, not to punish, but to support. And one thing I wanted to just point out here is we as women, we are more community based, I think. This is my opinion. And I think a lot of us share a lot more in this space. And one of the things that I wanted to say at the accountable portion is it's really, really helpful to get people who are truth tellers around you that care about you, love you as a person, and that you can share your goals with in the beginning of the year. So once you write them down, once you get your mindset good, you put those goals out there, share them with a friend. Like I talked about my vision board nights, some people share their visions for the year ahead. Some people don't want to share as much, but it helps your friends to support you and ask you questions. And studies have shown that collaborating with accountability increases your success by 76%. So if you want to be held accountable, it's a good thing to bring in a friend. And then the last one is leverage. One goal should create multiple wins, more confidence, more clarity, and more energy. So again, think about one goal, and that goal, I could use my goal for public speaking. I wanted to publicly speak this year. That is a complex goal, right? It's probably got multiple wins throughout the year. And those wins help me to get more confidence and clarity as I move forward. So leverage these goals to form you as a person. Now we're getting into the good stuff. Now we can get out our pencils and pens. So we talked about mindset. We talked about all of the things that help us to stay on the path, get to our goals, those types of things. So for your goals, as you start to execute them, this is a great way to do it. Plan, pilot, scale, sustain. Normally I'd put this in a quadrant that's like 4 blocks, plan, pilot, scale, sustain, but this walks through a methodology. So it's not like all or nothing, right? When you dive into these goals, it's a process that helps to complement all of the mindset tricks that we talked about as we got here, right? The planning stage is all about, hey, what am I trying to accomplish, and how do I think I'm going to get there, right? Then you move over to the pilot stage. Now, a pilot is just that. We've all seen like series pilots, right? That's a show they're testing out and they want to see if it's a good show or not. We've seen, we've all seen technology pilots where they're rolling out a new feature in a technology and it's just for a limited time or it's just for a limited segment. So as you jump into these goals, bite-size them, right? Goals, this could become very overwhelming, right? Try a small thing, try it on for size, see how it feels, scale it, right? So then what did you learn? How did it change you? How do we modify our approach going forward given the new information that we have, that reflection point? We're going to start scaling it now and refining it so that we can continue that growth for the future, right? Because we don't just grow and then we're done. We're going to continue that growth for the future. And then sustain. How do we continue to make this a habit, a healthy habit in our life? And how do we continue to keep it there? So instead of looking at goals as like one and done, right? Let's look at it as how am I growing through this? How does this grow and shape me? And you don't have to eat the elephant in one bite. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay, this one too goes back to the accountability partner portion of it. and it's a big learning lesson for me. I talked about having accountability both in leadership and with your goals. And it's not punishment, it's about partnership. And I think a lot, and I've seen this a lot in my career, and I think many of you probably have. Uh, Many of us look at a situation where somebody has told us we've missed the mark, we haven't landed the plane quite right, or we didn't land the plane, and we say, it's bad. I messed up. I'm never gonna be, good again. I'm gonna get fired. These things, unless you've done something seriously detrimental, and you know that. Come on, we all know that. Accountability is not about getting punished, getting in trouble. You shouldn't be giving yourself the guilt trip of I'm a bad person. It's about partnership. Many of us in our careers have had leadership that has also made us feel bad or to punish us when we show up accountable for something or we show up for something. So if we challenge our way of thinking about accountability and feedback as it's not punishment, it's partnership. Because as we move through these goals, what we're going to be learning is lots of different things about ourselves, which is what we want. Those things can be good and they can be bad. And when I go back to saying 76% of your goals actually are achieved more often if you share them and you're supported. Sometimes it's good to have an accountability partner to lovingly come up to you and give you the best advice that you can receive. And it's good to take that advice knowing that that person is coming from a space of care and concern, and then they help you to be shaped, because we don't always see ourselves. And when we do see ourselves, I'll say that it's through a lens that modifies us. I'll say it is, I want to call it body dysmorphia, but it's not body dysmorphia. But we don't always see ourselves the way that others do, and so it's good to have somebody to bounce stuff off of. Okay, so identity shapes or I'm sorry, identity drives your momentum. And here, instead of talking about motivation, I wanted to talk about momentum versus motivation. Motivation is inconsistent because it's something that you gotta have, right? I mean, like if I was gonna get up and get out of bed and run every morning, I might talk about my motivation. People say motivation all the time, but it's less about motivation and it's more about momentum. Similar to what I talked about in the reflection points. Motivation is I'm looking for the motivation. I have ADHD, and sometimes my executive dysfunction or dysfunction because I can't get out of bed, or I can't get off this couch, or I can't get out of my ADHD paralysis. So if I was looking for motivation, I might not find it. Momentum, and the difference between motivation and momentum is that momentum is more about building a steady speed, right? It's the building of that energy. It's building onto that energy. And so momentum comes from discipline. It's about committing to yourself that you will do certain things. And then as you continue to do those things, you start to get and receive the rewards that help your brain to say this is a good thing, or to change you in a way to move forward, right? So I would say knowing yourself and knowing who you are brings that momentum, right? So I'll go back to all of those things that we talked about. Examining yourself, saying, who am I? Does this support who I'm becoming? Does this support how I'm growing? And as you know more about yourself, you're going to understand what you need in order to get that momentum to succeed and achieve those goals. So this is another one. Let's look at next year as a creative process. It's not about goals. It's more about what are we becoming and what are we creating in the year ahead. Who do we want to be? In order to do that, we need to achieve clarity. Clarity helps you make a choice and make intentional changes, and it helps to make that sustainable, right? Because you're clear about your goals, you're clear about who you are and where you want to go. Your identity it's going to shift, right? It has to. There's certain things that you have to shift in order for you to achieve personal goal growth. And one of the big things I would say here is my hope is, again, you guys came for a goal planning presentation, and I'm talking to you mostly about mindset. But when we talk about your identity shifts, it should shift, it should grow you, it should change you. And as you modify these mindset habits, it's going to definitely significantly impact your goals and how you achieve them. And then just the making aligned decisions, alignment, right? Those things are, does this support who I am? Does this serve me? Is this growing me? Is this changing me? Is it changing me in the right ways? Those are things that I think, help us to keep on the path of our goals. And with small tests along the way, it helps you, this goes back to the pilot point, it helps you to reinforce those positive changes and to help you to achieve those goals. Today, we didn't talk about strategy. We didn't talk about a planner. We're not talking about those color-coded systems because, again, it's mindset that matters. So as we close here, these are the 4 truths I want you to carry with you. So 1, your goals are an inside job. Your actions follow your alignment every single time. So be aware of what's going on in your mind. Don't chase balance, chase alignment. Balance is pressure, right? Alignment is power. Give yourself permission to evolve. You are not who you were this year. And next year, you're going to change as a person as well. So design your year for who you are now and who you are becoming. Again, instead of making it a checklist, make it about who you want to become and what are the things that get you there. And then the last one I would say, is it's from me, is lead boldly, rest deeply, and laugh through the chaos. If you're not having fun through the chaos and you can't find something to laugh about, try to, because that's something that I try to do all the time is, okay, but was it funny? Yeah, that horrible thing happened, but was it funny? And you get lots of laughs. And actually, one year, for one of my teams, what we did is all year, it was one of our years where we made so many significant changes, and it was just a really pressure year. And I saved all of the hilarious quotes that made us laugh that year, because, with Teams chats and stuff like that, and things that made us laugh hysterically. And I made us all a team shirt at the end of the year with our logo, and on the back, I made it like a concert tee. And it was just things that would not matter to anybody else but us, but it was stuff that made us laugh and got us through the year. So make sure you're laughing, have some fun with it. And since I had the Lauryn Hill quote earlier, how are you going to win when you ain't right within? I would say I'm going to end our presentation with one of my favorite singers, which is Taylor Swift. And she's got a lyric that says, "'Cause baby, I could build a castle out of all the bricks they threw at me." And that's what it's not that people are throwing bricks this year, but inevitably this year is going to bring chaos. Those are the bricks. But what do we do with those bricks? How do we make it into something more? How do we make it so that we're not shutting down and we are persevering with grit towards those goals? So with that, thank you. I was scared I wouldn't go an hour, or I was scared I wouldn't go a full hour, or if I did go an hour, that I would be talking like the Micro Machine Man way too fast and nobody would understand me, and we're towards the end. But I did want to thank Susan and the Her Title Collective. Thank you so much for creating the space and for, the way that you empower women in this industry. And thank you for letting me be a part of this journey. And for those of you who don't know, Stuart is, or Stuart, as I say Stuart, because I'm from Stuart, Susan and I met and I want to say October. And as I said, this was a big goal for me this year to do a presentation. This is my first one. So thank you all for listening, and I really appreciate it. I hope you guys got something out of it. I did create a takeaway to remind you guys, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? Everyone can unmute and ask your questions if you've got any. And I did send Kristen the RSVP list so she can send some follow-up information. But if you'd like to reach out to her, I can definitely get your email. Just let me know. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here for our final one episode of Her.Ignite for the year. And we all need to hear this. It was perfect timing for me. So hopefully it was perfect timing for the rest of you. And we do record this, so I will have it on her YouTube channel. And next month we have in January, it will be I will be presenting, and it will be on the Confidence Code, which is a book written with lots of science-backed information for women on how to. So it goes kind of aligns with what Kristen went with today. So it's perfect. So we'd love to have you at the next one, but that will go out in a couple weeks. And thank you everyone for being here, and happy holidays. If there's anything else, I don't see anyone.
I can't put the takeaway in the chat, so I'm going to send it to you to email out.
Okay, that works.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a happy holidays, and thank you for being here and supporting us.
Thank you.